everyone, and welcome back to the It's Good to Talk podcast. So today I'm joined by another podcast host. I'm here with Maya. So we're going to be talking about his podcast, his life, everything he's up to at the moment. Obviously, from the podcast is called Here for Dads, which probably kind of gives you an idea of what it might be about. But Maya is also a naval officer as well, and has a lot of experience of different cultures from living and working abroad as well. So brings a lot of wealth of everything else into what he does for his children and for other dads. And so we're going to get into that today and see where we go. We have no idea where we're going to end up. I'm sure we will spiral into different conversations at some point, because if you watch the podcast, you know what the fuck's going to happen. Let's be honest. So how are you, Maya? How you doing?
I'm good, man. What's going on? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's good here as well. I was just saying off camera, it is absolutely boiling in my office in the UK. So anyone that wants to say the UK is cold, fuck off. So I will warn as well, Maya. I know you've seen some of my stuff. Swear if you need to or if you want to. It doesn't matter.
Man,
If
I'm
YouTube
a
wants to, yeah, if YouTube wants to demonetize me, I don't give a fuck. So, but yeah,
man, I've heard the worst.
yeah. So obviously, like I say, you do the Here for Dads podcast, and you know there's a lot of other stuff, like a lot of other hats that you wear as well, like I said. So just wondering if you can give us like a quick breakdown of like what you're doing, what you've done, what's the plan going forward, and everything like that.
Yeah, man. I guess I'll go back a little bit because my
Yeah.
first identifier was football player. Like that's
Okay.
all I really cared to be. That's all I really cared to be called. Not husband, not daddy, like none of that other stuff. It was just football player. I ran track too. That was fun, but all the money was in football. So
Okay.
played in high school, did really well, man. We won our state championship. First time it had been done since like 1943. So that's all that was in my mind at that point.
Yeah.
So next, I went to college. I went to United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland,
Yeah.
and played football there. Had a blast. The one thing I found there that I wasn't sure that I was gonna find and wasn't even looking for was my wife. So that's when life kind of really took off. She graduated a year before I did. So instead of my mind being completely on football my senior year, it was on football and how am I gonna propose to this beautiful lady that I met.
Nice.
So as I graduated, the first place I got stationed was in Norfolk, Virginia. So in Norfolk, Virginia, my wife was there, I was there, and we didn't really plan it, but we kind of planned it. Like we talked about it at least. We got married, and then we're like, hey, if a kid comes along, like let's just do it. And our first kid came along.
Mm.
Name's Azai, affectionately actually Meyer Crawl the third, because I'm actually the second. So he
Right.
came along, and I tell you, bro, everything changed. Like they say, when you have a kid, everything changes. It just became a lot to like juggle and a lot to handle, and
Mm.
I wasn't prepared like at all. Like I thought I'd be at least a little bit prepared. I wasn't prepared at all. From doing the husband thing to having a very intense job, being in the military, going away, coming back, and then now somebody else depending on me who shared
Mm.
the same name. That was completely different for me. And then we had baby number two. During that time, my wife decided to get out, and we're gonna support each other doing it that way. Went all the way to Guam on the other side of the world for my next tour.
Fun.
Supposed to do it for 3 years. Yeah, it was completely different, but it was amazing, man. It was, I think it was exactly what we needed. And just to like always be right by the beach was so cool, great for the kids. And
Yeah.
we're supposed to do a 3 year bid, at least what we call it, 3 year tour over there. And we got really cool news from our doctor that we were having twins. And I was like, how? Now, of course, I know how, but no one in her family, nobody in my family had even talked or even knew of anybody in the family that had twins. So I was the first one. So if you think just in the course of 4 to 5 years, I had graduated college and now I have a wife and I have 4 kids under the age of 5. And I was not prepared for any of it. So I went through a lot of spiraling, man, and I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk about some of that stuff. A lot
Cool.
of spiraling, a lot of backdoor conversations. And I just didn't know where I was. I didn't know what to do. And I was like, man, I got to get myself out of this funk. And
Mm.
the one thing I really enjoy doing is just talking to people, having bar conversations, speaking to my sailors. I enjoy just sharing moments. So one thing I decided to do was to start a podcast, man. I wanted to maybe not I didn't want to think about getting monetized or becoming a super high influencer or anything like that. But I wanted to meet other guys who was in the same position, speak to guys who had dealt with some type of mental health and of that capacity. And now I find myself here for the Dads podcast, where I sit along from other guys and we just talk about the trials and tribulations of being a dad and the good stuff too.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, that was a long drawn out one, but that's my story.
No, absolutely. I mean, you had to get everything in there, really, when you were saying it. I mean, as you say, that was a lot to happen in a really short space of time. Like, straight out of university, you meet your wife, then you've got a kid, then you've got another kid, and now there's twins.
Yeah.
Jesus. I mean, it's definitely something, like you say. I don't think anyone's really prepared to be a parent, even if you think you are. Like any of those people, because there's so many people now that wait until their 30s, maybe even a little bit later if they've got the money, and just think, yeah, I'm going to be, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to be prepared. I'm going to have this career, then they have a kid and go, oh shit, what the that's not what I was expecting. So, having it, like you say, at quite a young age, and both of you being in the military as well together, it kind of makes, it makes sense that your wife decided, or at least one of you would decide to go, actually, maybe both of us don't want to be in the military when we've got two kids, because
Right.
high pressure as well. And you're saying you started to spiral. So when you started to spiral with kind of everything happening at once, did you find the military, because I've had people on from the military before, from the Coast Guard and from Marines and things like that before, did you find being within the military something that helped you, or because you kind of went, okay, I've just, these are rules I understand, this is the thing, I'm set, okay, this I can get, I've got the control on this. Was that a help for you, or was it kind of, look, I've got enough shit here, I don't need to, how did it impact you when you were doing it?
I would say, if anything, it was more. It might almost be equal, like a help and a hindrance. Like
Right.
the help was the fact that it was the one thing that was constant. Like everything I did had an instruction. It was all black and white. You
Yeah.
speak to people this way. You wake up at this time. You go to this place. You do this. But the issue was, as I stopped making decisions for myself, because all the decisions were already made for me, and that's where the hindrance was.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't even have to think. Now, when I go home, I have people who are dependent on me who want different things at different times. And I'm not even sure if I really know what I want anymore, because I'm being all this for these people at home, and I'm being this type of person for, somebody I'm at work. Another way that it did help, though, is we have a very high, I want to say, mental health crisis that we're going through.
Yeah.
And this month being like Suicide Prevention Month, this is a great time to even talk about it.
Mm.
I was getting almost every day another email, seeing another social media post about a sailor, or maybe a Marine just killing themselves.
Mm.
And it makes you want to ask yourself, like, how is this happening? How are we allowing this to happen? And what can we do better as a force to help all people? And I had to first look inside myself, like, do I have any mental health issues? Like, am I going through anything of that nature at all? And I realized, I was like, hey, like, dude, you don't want to talk to your friends that you've been talking to for over 10 years, or hey, dude, like when you go home, you kind of lash out at your wife for no apparent reason.
Mm.
Or I just started having those thoughts, and I was like, man, maybe I don't feel a bit normal. Maybe I need to start talking to somebody or having a conversation about my own mental health. So it was a help and a hindrance, I guess.
Yeah, it is a weird concept when you start to realize that actually you are a bit fucked up, but you never quite realized. It's a conversation I think so many people don't have with themselves, like you say, because you can go, well, I'm just carrying on. I'm going to my job. I'm going to university. I'm going to, whatever it is. That's how life is. And then when you start to think about it, you kind of go, oh wait, shit, that's not actually how that. Okay, we have issues, but you never think about it until you start to actively do it. And I mean, I have, there's some, obviously some kind of built-in toxicity towards it in both the military and my background, which is martial arts. There's kind of that the same kind of, yeah, but we can hit or we can shoot our way. That's the way we deal with it. And it's
same for football, man. You just hit your way out of it. You're just like, I'll just go harder and hurt somebody today. That's what it is.
Absolutely. And it just that just makes sense. It's the same kind of thing. When you've got I was a tournament fighter. be the one that's standing, and you win. It's a very simple, it's simple rules, simple answers, and it's not until you kind of go, oh wait, no, that's not that actually. No, I'm in deep depression. Shit. Because I mean, I've had suicidal depression, as it was just, you know, you brought it up, since I was 15. You know, I've tried 9 times. And it is weird because I don't, it's a very strange one, because obviously there's people that have different types of mental health, and I have it, and it's always interesting other people that are outside of that, their viewpoint on it, because it's a very kind of, yeah, but mental health is over there, and we're here, so let's just, you know,
Right.
we don't want to talk about that. And I mean, I saw one post that basically said, if you've ever suffered mental health issues, you shouldn't be the one that's trying to help other people. And you're like, fuck off. Like, because you're like, you have lived experience, you literally know what they're going through.
Absolutely. It's like when somebody says like, hey, they've been divorced, don't take their recommendation or advice on marriage. It's like, hey, they might tell you what not to do. And
Yeah,
they
they've
might
got
remember some of the
yeah, they've got
failures,
book.
you know.
Yeah, they've got a little book of like, don't say this after an argument, have this, good luck to you. Yeah, and it's really strange, the conversations that we don't have with ourselves, because it just becomes this back and forth of what we should do. And obviously, you know, we're trying to raise kids as well. I think there's probably a difficulty now, I think more than ever, really, because we are more aware of it, or at least I think we've always been aware of it, but we're openly more aware of mental health now.
Right.
And it's trying to bring kids up in kind of going, okay, look, yes, you're male, you're allowed to find things tough, you know, for a start, because that's the bullshit that always gets put about, of like, no, you've just got to, you know, just got to battle down, just put your head down and get on with it. And you're like, yeah, I always love when people go, oh yeah, my granddad never complained and my great granddad never complained. I'm like, yeah, they were all suffering from PTSD. They all had.
Yeah, that's why granddad came home, his hat was cocked sideways, and the first thing he went to was the beer in the fridge, because that's how grandpa dealt with it. He just didn't use his words. There was a silent generation.
Yeah.
Grandpa was hurting.
Yeah, at 100%. Like I remember my granddad's fought in World War II. He was at Dunkirk, like one of the biggest battles, and he got promoted straight after Dunkirk, which just means he saw some shit, and
Yes.
never mentioned the goddamn thing. And people always go, yeah, see that they're strong and silent type. I'm like, no, he's the, my mind is killing me. None of you will understand. I can't tell you. And I think that's
Yes.
gonna be difficult. So is there, like, have you kind of thought of a plan going forward, or there's certain things even now that you're like, okay, I've got to make sure that they're aware of this. I've got to do this for your kids as they kind of come up, because obviously you started to be aware of it yourself. Is there something you're kind of making sure for your kids?
Yeah, I mean, I think I am a little bit more open
Mm.
now. When I'm actually, let's say I've had a hard day at work and the kids are just being kids. Like, they are extremely chaotic. I got 4 boys, man, and they rip and run around the house. They go ham. And a lot of times, you know, my wife might be trying to get something done and they're running between the legs, hanging on them, asking for the same snacks over and over. And you keep hearing over in left field sometimes people talk about gentle parenting and
Mm.
being able to communicate and control your voice. Is like, man, I'm trying my best. I'm saying the same thing over and over. I'm controlling my voice, and I'm just saying, hey, buddy, I need you to sit down. I need you to do this. But if I'm being honest with myself, all I feel is myself getting closer and closer to the top of my lid where the boiling point is. And at first, I would try my best to stay down here. And then when I just hit the boiling point, now I'm screaming, I'm yelling, I'm telling this person to do this child to do that, and they have no clue where it even came from.
Mm.
And I realized that was like the weak part of me, like trying to figure out how I can stay there and not show them that dad's frustrated, not show them that dad is weak in this area. But I'm like, maybe if I'm a little bit more courageous by just telling them, like, hey, daddy had a really rough day today.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can deal with you two running back and forth, screaming because my mind is just all over the place and I'm extremely overwhelmed. I can't really think. Would you mind taking you guys' play over there? And he's like, yeah, dad. Like I can do that.
Yeah.
And now he remembers, like, okay, dad gets frustrated sometimes. And that was like my courageous point, not the weak point, but the courageous point was to show them my weaknesses a little bit so that they can kind of get it. So I just won't hit the boiling point every single time.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that they try to do the same thing when he gets extremely frustrated for not being able to make the Lego set as high as he wants it. He can come to me and say, like, Dad, I'm trying not to cry, but I'm really trying to make it as high as I can, and I just can't do it.
Yeah.
Now it's opening up an entire tunnel for communication. And there's a bunch of different ways I can probably take that, but that's one way I've at least tried to implement it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something to be said for that, and it is the idea of opening up and treating children like actual people, because I think that's something we just don't do. We go, yeah, they're a child, they don't get it, and it's like they
Yeah.
actually get way more than we give children credit for. I mean, you know, it's like if your parents get divorced or they have arguments when you're younger, your kids still hear that and still interact with that. They understand, they hear, they interact with all of the things around them. So if we actually treat them like you say, it's going to look, it's been a bad day. Please go over there. Like they're going to get it because at some point, like you say, they've tried to do something and they've got frustrated and thought, I'm having a bad day and this is happening. So they'd want the same thing. And it's just communication. But so many people don't want that communication with their kids because I think there's still this idea that I'm in charge, I'm the adult. And there seems to be almost a control thing that people think that you can't give any control over to kids. You can't expect them to know anything. And it's such a toxic idea because they understand so much more. Like they're sponges, they're literal sponges. We do not learn things at the same rate at any other point in our life as to when we're kids. That's when we learn the fastest.
They soak it all in, man.
Yeah.
Every single point of it.
It's crazy. I mean, try even anything from languages to random facts for Jeopardy. You learn it when you're a kid. It's there. You try and do that again when you're nearly 40 like I am. That's not, our shit's not going in so easy. That's just
no, man. I've seen, like, think about when the kids are like 3 years old, sometimes even 2, they're memorizing every single dinosaur.
Yeah.
Now these dinosaurs have like a 15-letter name. They all look absolutely different. And you're just like, how is he getting it? But he's soaking it all in. So it's like if you baby them, which is what I like to call, if you baby them and don't give them what they really want or what they really need when they ask why, they're never gonna know. And you're gonna be now at a later age either trying to help them figure it out or they're gonna go out in the world, which could really just be school, right? You can go out in school and not understand people's social cues that they're trying to tell them or trying to use because they don't want to be messed with or don't want to be played with at that point in time.
Yeah.
They're gonna get lost, and you don't want that.
Yeah, I mean, how many fights could be easily avoided if you just knew when to not say something to someone, when to walk away? I mean, because I like I said, with my background is martial arts, and I taught self-defense and martial arts, and the amount of times I have guys who would just be like, "Yeah, but I'm a man. I've got to do this," and I'm like, "No, you don't need to fight. Why? What the fuck? Why?" If you'd have just been taught to just walk away occasionally, because at the end of the day, if you get into a bar fight, it doesn't matter whether you win or lose, you lose something. Whereas if you just go, you know what, I'm fine, and walk away, that's it. Nothing's going to happen. What's the worst that's going to happen? The other guy goes, oh, that guy's a coward. So what? Do you plan on hanging out with them? Does it matter? Like, who the fuck cares?
It's like who are you anyway? Half the people that even make you feel that way, they're not your friends.
No.
They don't even have the number to text or call you. It's like, if you really got a problem with me, bro, you can text me and we can talk about it. If we can't talk about it because I don't know you and you can't text me because you don't have my number, I could care less who you are.
Yeah, it's that thing. I've heard it. Maybe I heard it from you actually. Like it's similar from that, which is, if you don't have my number to text me, then we don't have a problem because you don't know me. It is that, who the fuck cares? But so many people still have that idea, and I think those little things at the beginning can just do so much. I mean, how old are your kids right now?
So I got a set of 2. Well, the twins are 11 months. Then I have a 2-year-old. He'll be 3 the end of October, and then I got a 5-year-old. He'll be 6 in January.
Yeah. So, and I think if you said those ages to anybody, they'd be like, well, they won't understand anything, and it's yeah, they will. Like, especially when they can. I love, by the way, that you called your twins a set of 2. I think that's
That's how we got to think about it, man. Because if you try to just look at one, you'll get tricked real quick. The things that they're in love with doing right now is like walking up the stairs or crawling up the stairs, while
Mm.
the other one goes in the bathroom and just completely pulls all the tissue down or like plays in the toilet. That's you got to think of them as a set, so you'll never forget where the other one is. That's the only way to do it. But just like you said too, though, it's like other people will look at you and say they're not gonna remember anything anyway, right? And that's the one way that they talk about in the military is like, hey, go ahead and get all your time out really early, do your 20 years, retire, because they're not going to remember this first part. Like, go travel the world, do whatever you need to. But it's one thing is they're probably going to remember either the fact that you weren't there or they're going to start developing routines without you. That's one thing
Mm.
that they're going to do anyway. The other part of it is, although they might not remember, you remember.
Yeah.
You remember that you're not there. When you see the pictures that mom and the family has together, you're not there. You're gonna remember that.
Yeah, I mean, it's that biggest thing that so many fathers come to, and it's parodied in like in cartoons and everything of like, oh, but these are pictures and I'm not in them. What the hell? Like even in programs that are meant to be like just funny, like American Dad. There's a bit where he just goes, where am I in all these pictures? And it's like, oh, I must be behind the camera. It's like, no, that's our family videographer. Like you're nowhere because you're off
Yeah,
with doing that. Like you say, if you miss all of their life and then you get to their 18th and they're graduating from school and you're there going, I don't even remember their first date or their prom. Like, shit, where the
yeah,
hell have I been? Then, like you say, you remember. That's going to stick with
yeah.
you, and it
The
doesn't
other
matter if they.
part too is like, where do I fit in?
Yeah,
You do have the time. Like, where
yeah,
am I even supposed to fit in? They built a whole life without me.
yeah. You become Waldo in one of those puzzles where it doesn't really matter whether you're there or not because everyone's still trying to look for you.
Wow.
it's
Yep.
it's so problematic, I think, when it comes to that. You said when you were looking for things to do and obviously seeing other people and spiraling yourself that you thought of, hey, let's do the podcast and see about other dads. Like, was there ever a big plan for that? Obviously, you said the idea isn't to become the next Joe Rogan or any of that shit. It was
Right.
to just find other people like you and maybe get advice off of each other, almost like just a kind of dad's group, but online. But was there
Yep.
was
There
there a
we
bigger
go.
plan than that, or was it literally just that?
It was. Well, at least I can say the first thing that even made me trigger like having a dad group or finding a group of guys to talk about was I started asking myself like, how does my wife always have like the answers for our kids? Like when she's talking about what type of school, she'll come up with this long list of schools. When we need a new car seat, she'll have all these lists of car seats.
Mm,
Baby's sick, it's like, oh, it could be this, it could be this virus, or like he needs this medicine. I'm like, how does she always have the answer? And we became parents at the same time. And I started realizing she had a support system that was just growing outside of just her normal friends and family. And it
mm,
was social media, like you're talking about the Facebook groups. There's a lot of stay-at-home moms who may have like Instagram pages. And she essentially created just this hub that she can continue to go to and talk about. So at first I thought I was like, hey, maybe I'll try to do something like that. And everything that I put in always turned into like a dad joke. It was like the dad group, really, really cool. And next thing you know, is like dad's talking about mowing the grass. The next part is like all dad jokes. And it was great and funny, but it wasn't getting to the issue. Everything was either a little bit more passive or it was like that was our way of letting it out. I was like, hey, why don't we just like talk about it? Like we can just talk about it if we want to. And I remember the very first time I thought about even doing it, I had a conversation with my wife and we just recorded it. I was like, hey, this would be kind of like maybe our pseudo podcast.
mm,
And it wasn't like a full podcast or anything. And she says, like, why do you want to do it? And I said, I just need to create a space where guys can have a conversation and just share some of that stuff. I wanted to feel safe. I wanted to feel like the locker room. And I want us to be able to talk about being dad and being ourselves at the same time. We posted like that maybe 30-second clip and it went everywhere. Like it went viral. And I had guys who were really close to me already that we never even talked like that would reach out to me like, bro, this is what we need. Like, hey man, I've been wanting to talk about this. Like, hey, you should do this. You should have me on. I would love to talk about this part. And I was like, whoa, so there are other people who are dealing with the same thing I'm dealing with, and we're not even having a conversation about it. I just saw you yesterday, man.
Yeah.
So, and I was like, man, maybe this is something that I should be doing.
Yeah. I think, and for men, like you said, there was a lot of dad jokes. I think for a lot of men, we're far more insecure than women when it comes to this. Way more. Because I think, well, especially when you've got a sport network and you're a mum, you're viewed as, oh, you're a mum. And it's a positive note where it's just like, oh, is dad here today? And it's like it's almost kind of talked down to. And so dads just are like,
Yeah.
hey, we're just be over here in the corner. Yeah, we do the cookout. You talk.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there we go.
we're over here, you know.
We'll handle that stuff. Or you even see like some people kind of like talk down to you because they don't think that you even know. It's like, oh, dad. They just use this tone, and it's really condescending. Honestly, they do it at the hospital sometimes. You see people at the grocery store. Maybe you just be with your two kids by yourself, and they just look at you like, oh my god, I can't believe you look so great. It's so nice to see a dad with his kids. I'm like, you know, they didn't get here without me, right? Like I can be a part of their life, and be confident as well. Now, of course, I think some of us have bought into that, and that has also hindered us from feeling confident because we get that from everywhere else, and we're just like, okay, like maybe that is mom's job, like maybe that is what she's supposed to do.
Yeah.
But when we are there, it feels great, and we're like, I do want to do this.
Yeah, it
I
just
do.
becomes that reinforcement, doesn't it, from everyone else? And if you're already secure in it, insecure in it already, and everyone else kind of repeats that to you, you're like, oh, okay, I'll just make sure that the kids are there for after school stuff. Okay, yeah, I'll take them to the football, or I'll take them to whatever. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
I got the sports right.
yeah, exactly. You're the sports guy. You can go for that, and it's yeah, it is awful. And like you say, one of your friends that you just saw like the day before probably would have never said a damn thing to you until he just went, oh,
Yeah.
if he's going to talk, if Maya's going to talk about it, I guess I can talk about it then. That's another man that wants to talk. Okay. And
Right.
whereas you need that first step. Whereas I don't think, you've got Mumsnet and, online mums and everything. People just go in there. Like, oh, I have a problem. Let's go on there. Whereas I think men are far less likely to be like, oh, I'll Google it. Because the best that we usually get is dads asking their dad. And their dad is from an older generation. So probably definitely doesn't know.
Yes, you're right. You're so right. And you got to think about some of the dads who are now in a position who didn't grow up with a father. Now
Mm,
they feel completely lost, right? Maybe they don't have an older brother or someone they feel comfortable talking to. Now, what are they supposed to do?
mm.
Like, are they just going to be lost by themselves without somebody to talk about and they continue to drown? Either they find themselves drowning and find their way somewhere else, either playing golf nonstop, spending more time at work, you know what I mean? Or maybe spiraling into depression. Maybe they divorce their wife because everything around that is just stressing them out so much. They're just pushing this anger and temper and frustration into their relationship. And it's just gets hard. It's like, man, if he just had somebody to talk to or even knew that it was a problem, he might be doing a little better.
Yeah. I mean, like I don't have kids, unfortunately. But I know full well that I would have probably gone to my dad, and my dad was born during World War II. His way of dealing with things is not the way to be dealing with things now. And he
Tell
was
me
not
about it.
expected to be there. Like he was not expected. This is a guy that was in his 20s, in his 60s. Like he was not expected to be there. So his interaction would be like, well, you just leave you leave whoever to that. Like, 'cause that's his way of thinking, and it just perpetuates it. And
Yeah,
it's
just
it's
go for a drink, bro.
yeah, go for a drink. Well, I don't know if you have. I presume you have something like this in the US, but over here, when you have a child, when you have your child born, all the dads will go out with their mates. It's called wetting the baby's head, and we go for a pint. That's
Oh
literally,
no, I haven't.
yeah.
We haven't done that.
Oh yeah, no, that's what we
That's
do.
wedding the baby's head.
Wetting the baby's head, and you just go to the pub.
That is amazing. I mean, we kind of like have our own portion of the baby shower because usually like it's the funnest when baby showers come around like football season
Mm.
because then all the girls are wearing their really pretty dresses and all the girlfriends are hugging mom and they're rubbing the belly. It's okay. Well, I don't have a belly to rub, but I can rub maybe this fifth of Jack and we can watch the game with some of my guys. We can play a couple games here and there. But yeah, that's about the closest thing. We might adopt that one though, wedding the baby. I like
Well, it was because I'm although I don't have my own kids, I am one of several. And I have, like, I was an uncle at 54 minutes old. So I've
Oh,
like, yeah, so I've had a lot of times where I've had like my brother-in-law or whoever just gonna go, hey, let's go for a drink, let's go wet the baby's head. And then there's like a group of us, and then it becomes the whole pub because it's like, oh yeah, my baby's just been born, yeah, like yeah, it just I went to one when one of my nephews was born, and I remember we did wetting the baby's head. It ended up with the entire bar just drinking with us. And then there was a random
oh,
it became then there was a random like arm wrestling contest, and it was just like the entire pub was just there. We're all wearing the baby's head for this one, and it was just a big. It was a very kind of it was a very kind of brotherly thing that happened. But yeah, it's kind of the only time where I think dads in that sense kind of have that thing of going, I'm a dad, this is our celebration. But at the same time, mum is probably with her mum taking notes of like, oh, so this is how I do this, cool, that's how I do that, and
yes.
we're getting drunk.
Absolutely. And we're just getting drunk. Nobody's passing tips on how to hold the baby the correct way or what it's gonna be like in the hospital room. It's
Yeah.
really like, hey, dude, we were in the shock, like we were in shock in the hospital room.
Mm.
She's gonna grab your hand really hard. Just be there. That's pretty much all we get. Like, and that's about it. And I mean, even when we're talking about being at the bar, it's usually for us, at least I've seen it happen two different ways, where somebody's doing something like a wedding down and it's like really extremely positive. But you kind of think about maybe the time in life. I just had a podcast with a guy who had his first child while he was in high school. So it's like everybody was maybe being like very happy for him, but at the same time, it's like, oh snap, dude, your life is over. Like,
Yeah.
what are you gonna do? And now they're like, okay, well, who do I talk to? Where should I go? You know what I mean? So it can be both the negative and the positive. And if you're the lady, they're getting a lot of help, and it's just normal for them to talk about it. Not as normal for us to talk about
Yeah, and I mean, saying that with the like the time of life and everything, I mean, I'm a representation of that for my parents because they were 40 when they had me. So, they were very like I'm the last one. I'm the last one to be born. So it was very much the kind of my mum had her first child at 18, and I was the last one at 40. So there was a very different interactions for both of us and different ways of being born. One of us being
it. Yeah.
born in the 60s and one of us being born in the 80s. Is a
Wow.
very, very different time period, very
Very.
different. I tend to kind of, I think my mindsets and things kind of shift between Gen X through to Gen Z because I'm kind of in between all the way along. And when I've been, whereas, my sisters and my brothers don't have the same viewpoints as me because the way that they were brought up was different. And it's like
Right.
you're having to relearn every time. And I think for women, you get that ability to relearn every time, whereas men will just be like, well, I'll just do the same thing I did last time, right? Just it's 20 years on, but
Right.
it's the same rules, right? It's worked for them. He's alive still. That's fine. It's that
Right.
kind of joke of like, as long as a dad can keep their kid alive, then they won.
There you go. That's like our first year birthday party. The first year birthday party, the kids could care less of what's going on. They don't even remember any of that. It's like, good job, dad. Good job, mom. You kept the baby alive.
Yeah.
It's really our celebration for keeping the baby alive. And guys are very much like that.
Yeah. So when you were saying about sparring, how did you find a time, obviously having your kids, and when you started to question your own kind of mental health, was there a time where you thought, I don't know if I can do this, or this is going to be like, this is, we need to sit down and have a conversation with my wife. I don't know if I can continue this. I don't know if I can do this or this or this, or we've got too many, or like, was there a time when you just thought, I can't handle it? Because I mean, obviously, for a lot of things in mental health, and I think this is something that
Yeah.
people don't realize, is that especially depending on what kind of mental health you're going through, it's not as simple as, oh well, just get over it and you just do it. It's a kind of, no, my mind will not let me do this. So was there a time when you just thought, shit, like this is going to be serious issues now, and has that then led to the way that you have parented? Like, did that have then an impact with it as well?
I think it was a bit of like, I knew I didn't have a choice, which is
Mm,
like a very hard thing to think of and to remember. and a very helpful thing at the same time.
Mm,
I was like, I know I have to find a way out. Like there has to be an escape because I know friends and I know people who found a way out, and I know I can't be alone in it. Like there's no way that I'm the only person that feels like this. And I
mm,
got a bit lucky because we were doing something like shift work where I was working just nights. And I was like, I got to decipher my way through this. And I have to think about it the way that I normally think about it. And I
mm,
started basically building equations. Like, how am I going to figure out a way to kind of build this tunnel up versus building this tunnel down? And the reason I even found out I was building my tunnel down is because when I started feeling like I couldn't do it anymore, I was like, who's supposed to be the person that pulls me out of this hole? I thought I had a lot of friends. I thought I had a lot of family members. Like, where is everybody? Like, why do I feel so alone? And I started looking back at the timeline where I was actually pushing these people away and never even realized it. Started going into my phone and realizing like I was getting a text message, hey dude, what's going on, man? How you doing? Like you guys are out there in Guam, like yeah, are you stabilized? Like all these different, and I just wasn't responding. Or I
mm,
was giving people very short answers, right? Or I was finding other things to do than like maybe the normal hobbies or playing the video game, things that might allow me to relax a little bit more. And I was like, okay, I've been digging this tunnel and pushing the dirt towards them so that
mm.
they can't get to me. So maybe I need to start finding a way to like draw people in. So
Yeah.
I was like, who's the one person that I'm the closest to right now and is gonna listen to me, even if I don't know how to communicate my way through? And that was my wife.
Mm,
And I really didn't even know what words to use. I just said like, I'm not okay.
yeah.
And that was really all I had to say. She
Mhm.
didn't force me into saying anything else at the point in time. She didn't try to figure it out. But the thing was, she already knew. She already knew that something was different, that I wasn't okay. And as the weeks went on, we started talking a little bit more. Like, hey, I remember you used to do this. Like, whatever happened to that? Hey, have you spoke to your best friend in a while? You should really reach out to him. And then I started connecting those tissues, started connecting the web of friends and people to be around. Even if I wasn't having the conversations about what my challenges were, I started feeling a little bit more normal just being in community.
Mm,
And then that's when I started having the conversation with my wife. When I first realized that I can be a little bit more bold about it and I can lean into it a little bit more. It just opened up about. I was like, babe, like I feel extremely overwhelmed all the time. Like that's really what it is. Like I know what I'm doing at work, but I
mm,
don't feel like I can make you happy. And the things that you want, I don't feel like I have the energy to even provide. I keep blowing up at the kids. I don't want to. I don't want to help sleep train. I can't get them to eat when you're on your reserve weekend, and I just feel overwhelmed there. Like everything is just becoming too much. And she was like, "Okay, well, we can peel back on this. We can peel back on that. Let's handle what we can control right now,
mm.
and then we'll start adding things on a little bit by a little bit." So
Yeah.
that's where I was. That's kind of how I got out of the hole.
Yeah, and I mean it's good that you had that person that recognized, like you say, your wife already knew. So she probably had same as the list for the kids. She had a list of like, okay, well, if he comes to me, if he eventually
Yeah,
fucking gets to me, you're right. Get go contact them. Go fuck off. And it's one of those things. I mean,
yeah,
just for me on normal mental health stuff, I know that I have a friend in Florida, for instance, that is always going to be on the at the end of a Zoom call if I need him, and he'll just talk, and he won't like go off of it because unfortunately I'm here by myself, and I'm not near family, so it's the same kind of thing of like he'll just get on a call. And the last time like I reached out and just went, hey dude, I'm not doing good, this is not being good. He just went, oh yeah, I knew, that's why I've been fucking talking to you. I'm like, oh okay. It's just like, oh
makes
shit.
sense,
Like,
man.
I think you don't realize that you're giving off that energy. You don't realize that everyone's got going like, no, we know there's a problem, but we're not going to push
Yeah,
you unless we see something really bad. We're not going to push it, but we're all ready to like jump on it if you let us jump on it. And I think that's, and with having that thing with like other dads and setting up those groups, I think that's feeding into that as well. It's like everyone there knows they've got problems, but none of them want to ask each other. Everyone's ready to give advice and to help each other, but they don't
yeah,
want to ask each other, so then they've got no one to say it to. And it's
yeah.
such a weird thing.
And maybe it's like a little bit of insecurity too. It's like I don't know if I actually have the tools to help him if he gives me everything. Like
Yeah.
if he just leans into me and gives me everything, what if I say the wrong thing? Like what if I'm not prepared for what he actually gives me? And the other part is like that guy knows you're already dealing with stuff,
Mm,
and he's like, you already got kids, man. You got a family. I don't want to put my stuff onto you. And
mm.
guys do that all the time, man. It's just like I don't want to unload what I have onto you because I don't want to give you too much, or I don't want to feel weak, or I know you're already dealing with stuff. But we got to get better at just allowing, or even asking, like, "Hey, man, I feel like I got some heavy stuff. Like, do you have the capacity to hold some of it, or can I talk to you about it, or when can I talk to you about it?" And we also got to start looking for tools that's going to allow us to open up our friends a little bit more and be prepared when they do bring those things to us.
Yeah, and it's so difficult because I think so many of us like so are brought up by parents and by dads because that's the role model we're taking, who didn't know what the fuck they were doing and who didn't do this. And so a lot of the time, even you know, outside of us being dads, just in our normal life, we just go, okay, well, dad did this. I didn't see dad ever complain. I didn't see dad ever do this. So that's the way I've got to be. And it's just like, yeah, but he was also in the shed every night drinking. Like this, there was a bottle of Jack
Yep.
there every fucking night. He was going to the pub, you know, he was getting into fights or whatever. We didn't see that.
Yeah.
But that's what was
Like
happening.
it's not for you. Yeah, you think it's not for you to see, or even if you did see it, you didn't understand it because nobody was talking to you about it. It became like this really silent, somber thing. It's like when dad comes home, this is what's gonna happen. Stay away from him. He's always angry. And you just don't even know what's going on. And people might know what's going on, right? But they don't tell you because they maybe you're a kid and they don't think you'd ever understand. And I remember speaking to a young man, and he was like, I think my father just wasn't the father that I needed him to be. Like
Mm,
he just didn't know how to be the father I needed him to be. And I was like, you got to understand that the only requirement really to be the father at all is to have the baby. Like that's the only requirement. It might take maybe less than 3 minutes for some of us to become a dad. You know what I mean? The rest of it is the 9 months until the baby gets here. There's no other test in between there. So
yeah,
when you come out, automatically your label is father, and it's gonna take the tools that you were already given from your dad, the tools that were given to you from somebody else, or the tools that you're willing to go get. Yeah, he probably didn't know how to be your dad.
yeah.
And you got to give him a little bit of grace for that.
Yeah, it's, you know, for a lot of younger dads especially, they're probably a dad because something went wrong in the first place. You know, the condom broke. So they're becoming a
Yeah.
dad and going, I don't know how to be a dad. And it's like, well, you didn't know how to do the stuff beforehand. That doesn't stop the fact that it's happened now. You know,
Yes.
and that's the thing to deal with. I mean, I know, you know, it's very different circumstances, but a similar kind of thing. I became very isolated, and I through lockdown and everything, because I lost my wife just before lockdown, and
Oh man.
immediately we then went into lockdown in the UK, and because I had effectively not, I'd latched on to my wife's friends. You know, that those are my friends. I made my friends at university, and then you just lose your friends from then. And so I I had no emotional outlet either, because beforehand, martial arts guy that runs. So when we could, well, I'll just go to the gym. I'll throw some people around. I'll go for a run.
Yeah.
The lockdown happens just after, like, she passed away in November. In the like February, March, we went into lockdown, relative, you know, basically hard in the UK. You can't leave your house.
Yeah.
And I'm there going, I'm no longer allowed to go to the gym. I'm no longer allowed to be that far away from home. And I haven't made friend structures to be able to do anything. And I think you don't realize because, like you say, you never made that connection to other people. You never asked. You never went, hey, I need to talk, man. I just need to talk. Like, it doesn't matter about anything else. You know, if you can just take 5 minutes of my time, and I'll ask somebody else to take 5 minutes of my time, and fuck it, let's just spread my misery across lots of people.
Just spread
And
it
then
out.
instead you just collapse, which is basically what I did during the time afterwards. Now, obviously, I collapsed because my wife had just passed away. It's normal, but I collapsed even more because I didn't have anyone apart from my wife's family. There was no one there, so it was a very similar thing. You become isolated, and although it's not the same, I think there's a very similar thing when you're a parent, when you're a father, and you become isolated. You still withdraw into yourself, and you kind of lose maybe some of who you were, or some of who you wanted to be, or some of who you envisaged to be, because life hasn't fitted that well. It hasn't done what it needed to.
Right.
You know, and I think you can find some of the best help and some of the best people to talk to in areas that you never thought about. I mean, so I know this is a very bad word in America. It's not so much over here. I'm an atheist. So so over here, the last person you'd think I would go to get any kind of guidance is someone from the church. But actually, I went to different people, you know, I went to a therapy and I went for all these things. And in the end, the only person that I actually trusted with just being there whilst I just broke down was the vicar who worked, the reverend who worked at the place that because I worked for a religious university, and he worked there. So I just went to him, and he never basically said anything. He hardly ever like responded. He just sat there. He just sat there and was like, if you need a hug, you know, I'll give you a hug.
That's really all we need sometimes, man. It's like somebody to just listen.
Yeah.
That's it. Because the hardest part is like nobody's there to listen.
It's so much. So it's why I love there's a website called shoutintothevoid.com, and I fucking love it. So it's a really basic website. It is just a big black blob, like there's meant to be a black hole. You just write whatever you need to in it, press enter, and it just disappears into this black hole and screams as it does it. And it's just a way of venting, just going, you know, whatever you want to put into it, and the computer screams for you. And it's so cathartic. Wow. I love it. It's been around for years.
So I'm gonna have to try that.
Because you're just like, whatever's pissed me off today, I'm putting it in there. But it is amazing. I think so many of us don't reach out to those people because we think they're not going to be able to help and they're not going to do it. And actually, like you say, just saying it sometimes, you can kind of go, yeah, oh my God, I've said it. I've admitted that I can't do this. I've admitted that I'm not okay. And just being able to say that out loud, you suddenly kind of go, oh, okay. This is different now, you know. It's
because you start feeling that things aren't normal, right? Like when you come home, just things don't feel normal, but sometimes you get afraid to label it, because once you label it, it's like, okay, now I have a problem. And what does it mean if I have a problem? Can I still work at the same place that I work at? Will people still talk to me? Will they speak to me differently? Will things be taken away from me? You start thinking of all the negative things if you first create the label or understand that something's not okay. The thing is, you're still the same person. You just got to fix some stuff. And a lot of it is fixable. Some of it is you just got to come out. Maybe you need a little bit more help. Maybe you need to go to the hospital, speak to a real therapist. But like you said, too, like even with having the friends, as we go through life, and maybe it's getting married or having kids, we do it to ourselves, and our friends sometimes do it to us. Like, think about when you're young, you just got married, and the guys are like, okay, well, I guess we can't hang out with him the same way we did. Like, probably won't be going to the club. And you start, like, naturally disassociating yourself from those people instead of finding ways that you can stay connected. Some of them you still stay connected to, but not all of them, right? A lot of them are other married couples that you stay connected to. Same thing happens with kids. Like, okay, we're not going to be able to have the same routine relationship we used to have. You start disassociating yourself. And now you find yourself in a group. You're like, okay, how did I used to make friends? I used to make friends at the bar. Don't really go to the bar that much anymore. I used to make friends like in my sport. You know, maybe we go play basketball. I don't really do that anymore. It's like, how do I make friends? For me now, I had to realize that my environment has changed. So maybe I should speak to the person at the playground that also has kids, because we automatically do have a connection where we have kids. We at least relate there. Maybe there might not be my type of person. I'll move on to the next person. I need to branch out a little bit, not be so afraid to just have a conversation with somebody, because you never know who they're going to end up being for you.
No, and it is just one of those things. And you're quite right when you disassociate from your friends, because like if somebody asked me who my best friends were, I'm going to name the guys I went to university with, and that's 20 years ago. That's 20 years ago. I try and forget that it was 20 years ago. You know, especially now I've got 4K. People start to see that I'm actually my age now. So you know, it's a problem. But I kind of forget that, and actually, like, perfect example is I reached out to one of my friends a few months ago. I just went, hey man, I'm not doing good. This is a friend from university. And I hadn't spoken to him for ages because, you know, it's a man thing. You don't talk to people for years and you still just, yeah, but they're still my friends. So I'll just send them a message 4 years later, you know. And I hadn't spoken to them since like 2-3 years. I said, hey man, I'm not doing okay. You know, it would be okay if I just came and saw you because he's in France now. I was like, you know, I can get a flight, you know, just hang out. And this motherfucker had not told me that his wife, who I knew as well, had left him for another man, and they were divorced. And I was like, what?
Wow.
And I'm like,
wait, catch me up.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, which one of us? Like, because both of us have done the same thing there. Both of us have just gone, well, I don't need to reach out to them. Whereas that's a fucking major thing in your life, man. And also, like, he didn't think to go, because I guarantee you, he had some shitty nights. He didn't think to go, oh, well, I can just message him. And I didn't go, oh, I'll just message him. We just carried on as normal. And then it's only because one of us, like me, just went, you know what, I'm just going to reach out, that we both went, oh, fuck. Like, and it's so weird that massive life events can happen. And they just don't happen in male friends group because we don't talk about that. We're just like, oh, it's been 4 years. Yeah, but you know, you see it on TikTok, you see it on all the things all the time about the differences between friend groups, and it is such a normal male thing to just kind of go, well, my best friend. Oh yeah, no, I haven't spoken to him in 10 years, but no, that's my best friend.
Yeah, and it's so easy for us to say. It is so normal for us to do that.
Yeah, and you do that, then you just kind of go, it's really weird because then you're just going to go, oh yeah, well, we'll just go to the bar, and it does seem as if no time's passed. But then you start talking about things and realize, oh shit, like we've like a lifetime has gone by, but we don't know about it, and it's so weird, like you say, and you forget. You know, as you said, when you go into the park and stuff, you forget how to make friends. I mean, I haven't got a fucking clue anymore. I mean, my life is online. Yeah, I mean, I work effectively online. That's what I do. I manage other people's channels. I have my own channels. I'm online. My friends, I've got friends online. I have some of my best friends I've never fucking met. Like, it's because that's just the way things happen now. But if I want to reach out my door, no, I don't. I know my next door neighbor. I know his name. I don't know his wife's name, his kids' names. I don't know my neighbors that way. I know no one else in this town. Like, the nearest people I know are like 20 miles away, because that's just the thing you get into. Because I bought this house and then just went, oh yeah, I'll get rid of this soon, and then I went traveling and didn't think about it. So you just forget how to make friends. You know, you maybe are good at making friends temporarily. So like when I went traveling around the world for 7 months, a couple of years ago, for like 7 months of the 12, you know, I was going from Asia to Africa to like parts of Europe and just traveling around, and, you know, made friends as I went, and you know, hung out, had drinks. I have a number for like 2 of them now. Like, and I don't really talk to them because
it's just like that, man.
Yeah. And it doesn't seem to be the same for you know, for women when they make friends, and they're talking to them every day, and they're like, oh my god, I haven't spoken to them for a week, and like, yeah, nothing's happened in a week. What do you need to talk to that person for? And like you say, yeah, and that's the thing, and that's, I think, especially when you come into like mums and dads, that's where you have the big thing, because new advice on how to look after your kids. Dads haven't got a clue. They didn't talk to the best dad mate in like 2 years. They saw him last time at the Super Bowl. That was like 8 months ago. Whereas mum has been on fucking Facebook.
Like, she's just getting these feeds and it's completely full. And you think about, like, for us, you think about who are the first like father figures you saw outside of your father. It was maybe some of your coaches, right? But now you're 10, 20 years down the road, so far away from your coaches. They're not coaching you anymore. You don't think to reach out to them like, hey, you know, how you doing, sir? You know, I got kids now. Can I still have the same type of mentorship that you gave me? They'd probably be open to it, but it's like, we just don't do it. We don't keep that same connection. We just talk about, hey man, I had a really great coach back in the day. He's keep his foot in my butt, and now he's gone.
Yeah.
But he's really like an hour away still. He's not even really far. Social media makes it easy to stay connected too.
100%. I literally had this conversation. So I had my mother, one of my sisters, and one of my nephews down at the weekend. They've just come in to hang out, And one of my nephews, he's 13, and it's he's 13. And I was basically saying, why don't you go and do some martial arts? That was the discipline for me when I was a kid. Obviously, I mean, I started martial arts when I was 4. But I'm like, hey, you can still go along to it, and you can do this. And why don't you go and see Sensei Roger Payne? You go to the Mid Sussex Martial Arts. That's my old sensei. That was when I was his age and younger. Roger was, or Sensei Payne, I should say. It feels wrong to call him Roger. Sensei Payne, he was my.
I know, right?
It's just like I'm an adult now, but it's still not right.
Yeah.
He was that avuncular kind of person that was there, and he's still there for like all the people of my old town. He's been there since fucking 80s, 90s, still there at the same place. And that is, like you say, that's 2 hours from my house. I could go, I even messaged him like 2 or 3 years ago. I thought about, hey, maybe I'll go and, like, because it was so close, maybe I'll go and do some training. I haven't done that particular martial art in a while. Maybe I'll go and train a bit. The second I said my name, he just went, oh, that person, and just said, he knew my name immediately. They used to hang out, and I'm like, I haven't been to your dojo in a decade. So you're quite right. They'd probably happily just be like, oh yeah, come and hang out. Let's, but you don't think about it because that was the father figure, but that's outside, that's away now. And I'm now saying to my nephew, go to this person, and I haven't fucking talked to them for years either. It is weird. It's so strange.
That's so true. We got to get connected, man. We got to start like leaping out and do it. For some reason, there's like a little bit of fear in us in reaching out to those people again. It's like, for some reason, it's not as easy, and I think it's just because it's not normal. And we got to get out of that. Like, my brother has been forcing me, and I finally called my old coach, who was essentially the same person to me. He coached me from middle school all the way through high school, man. I'm telling you, I wrote papers about this guy in college. Everything I wanted to be was like everything he'd ever taught me. And I just didn't talk to him for like 6 years. And I was like, never texted him. I might have did like, the happy birthday on Facebook or something like that, but that was about it. Yeah. He was like, bro, how have you not spoken to him? Like, how have you not told him you have kids, that you're married now? And I was like, I don't know. And like every time I found myself picking up the phone, it was just kind of like this thing. I was like, why is this weird? Like, it shouldn't even feel weird at all. I don't know what it is. And finally, I just called him, and he was so happy to hear from me. And I was like, man, I got to keep this up. Like, I got to learn how, at least for me, like as a dad, talk to my kids about that. Talk to my kids about not only being a loyal friend, but how to be connected and stay connected to your friend. Tell them the reason why you need it and why it's important. Because he's got friends now that I make him call that are all the way out there in Guam. And you never know. Maybe they'll be in different parts of the country or the world 20 years from now. But if they still had the connected tissue, who knows what they're going to need each other for? But he knows he's in a circle.
Yeah. And
it could be helpful.
It's weird. Like, we don't seem to, a lot of us don't, like you say, interact with those people that were our mentors for so long. And we just don't even, like you say, it's that thing of, but it feels weird. But I don't know why it's weird. Like I have a university lecturer who I talk about a lot in these things, and I've talked about him in all over the place because I kind of have an addiction to education, and he was a big part of keeping that going in my own mind. Dr. Ian Mackenzie. I've not spoken to him since I finished my master's in political theory, but he was one of my lecturers for my undergraduate degree. I then did not see him again until I went back for my master's years later. I went and taught in between. I went off and became a teacher, then went back to university, and he ran my master's course, and he was my dissertation supervisor for my master's. I've not. I even have him as a friend on Facebook. I have not spoken to him since the day I graduated from my master's, nearly like a decade ago. I have not spoken to him. He's still at the same university. He's still got the same position. It's it'd be so easy to just be like, "Hey, Ian, how you doing?" But
where do you think we should start, man? Like, where should we start to get out of that like disassociating funk of like relationships between men? Like, where do we start with that?
I think it's just starting to realize that everyone's the same. And I think we especially when it is a coach situation, a mentor situation, a university lecturer, those are relationships that have been grown in a very different way. Like you won't necessarily want to always just talk to your neighbor from 20 years ago because you didn't have a proper relationship with them, but you had you had an interactive, you probably as a coach or as a sensei or as a lecturer, you probably told them stuff because shit was going on in your life. They know who you are, and you spent significant years with them, so they're just normal people. And it's not bad to just be like, I'd like to tell you the impact you had in my life, but thinking about it the other way around, I mean, certainly for me, because I've had a weird situation, because I kind of forgot that I've been a self-defense instructor now. I mean, I don't really do it anymore. I kind of came out of it because of lockdown, but I've been doing it for like a decade. And so I have had times when somebody's contacted me and just been like, wanting to shoot the shit. And it's like, oh, fuck, I'm someone's fuck.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, I didn't really think about that. And I think once you think about how would I want to know that someone's been successful and that the stuff I did impacted them? Yes, right. So what the fuck am I not telling that guy that was there for me?
Right.
It's everyone should want to have the reaction like fucking Coach Carter when that kid gets up at the end, that's the impact we want to have. We want our coaches, our senseis, our lecturers, whoever they are, to just be like, my day has been fucking made. My day's been made because I found out that Maya, I found out that Adam, I found out whoever I made an impact on them. Like I'm the reason they're still here, maybe. I'm the reason that they got into this background. I'm the reason they did this. Ian McKenzie, for instance, Dr. Ian McKenzie is probably one of the major reasons I have continued to go into degrees and to do education. And I'm known by a lot of people as being the kind of the education guy that just does, like, I study so many things, because I kind of got obsessed with it. I loved it. I enjoyed it because he made that way of thinking. Even during a time, because I mean, for me, when I did my undergraduate degree in politics, for instance, I basically didn't pay attention for the last year and tanked my grades because I was too busy getting elected. So I was doing a degree in politics. So I was doing a degree in politics, but I wasn't doing my work because I was too busy actually being in politics. And so I got elected. I mean, I got elected. So, but I then, when I went back to my master's, I didn't necessarily have the grades. But when I went to Ian and just went, this, he went, of course we'll let you on. Like, I know what you did. Like, you're passing this shit. Like, you literally didn't do it because you were doing it. Like, that's of course. And then I did my master's and got amazing grades. And it was just like, and you've had that interaction. And so you can say to someone, hey, you are the reason I actually enjoy this. You're the reason I actually interact with this. Because if I'd have had somebody else that just went, that didn't see me as a person, didn't interact with it, I might have just continually thought for the rest of my life, actually, maybe I'd just do bad grades. It wasn't until someone just went, no, the reason you got those bad grades is because you didn't care. But actually, your grades are amazing. But forget about that. That's an undergrad. You're a master's now. What the fuck? That doesn't matter anymore. Like, this is the one you get. And but we don't think about it because we don't think about somebody else caring about where we are now. But like I say, we would. Yeah.
Seeing you is what I'm saying, like, for who you were too, because they were on the outside of that. Like when you were going through that crappy time, where you're just immediately stressed about trying to get elected and just doing a lot. They were on the outside and they knew who you were already, and they kind of knew your life, so they can come back and affirm you.
Yeah.
And we let go of those people just thinking about like whatever we're thinking, whatever the fear is. I think part of the fear, I think even for me, it was like, man, I haven't talked to them in so long. What if they like are upset with me about not talking to them or not reaching out to them? And what it does, it creates more time in between. And that's not gonna help. If anything, they'd be more upset. But what the thing really is, like once you reach out to them, they're extremely happy. I had one of my mentees just reach out to me this week. He was like, man, I feel so bad, bro. Like life has just been lifing. And I've just been, going on deployments here and there. I'm sorry I haven't connected with you. I'm just like, bro, chill, relax. Like I'm just happy to hear from you now. Like I never held a grudge from you for not speaking and reaching out. And we got to remember it's the same way the other way around. There's grace everywhere. Everybody realizes we got life going on.
Yeah. It's so simple, but we just don't we assume the worst of ourselves and of everything else going around us, and then tell us that that's true. And like we both said, it's just not. It's just not. I mean, when I went back to do my masters, for instance, the first thing he said was, "Hey, Adam, it's good to see you, man. You know, I remember, like, yeah, I remember those days in that module, that class that he taught me. Yeah. This should be fun." And like, he knew the political theories that I enjoyed as a fucking undergrad, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm not even check your stuff for this masters. No, I need to check for dissertation. I know you got it." And I'm like, "This is and again, I haven't interacted, but then same as you, I've had mentees, people that I've taught, that I've trained, and just it's weird. It's very, very strange that we don't interact with it. On that, is there anybody that you haven't reached out to that you wish you had then?
That I still haven't reached out to.
Mm.
Um, yeah, there's probably still a few. There's one coach I can think of from high school, and then there's a middle school teacher and an elementary school teacher that I all follow on Facebook, and that I haven't. I'm gonna submit to you right now is like that I'm gonna do before the end of the week, and I'll email you and let you know I did it before the end of the week. We're going into the weekend. Before the end of next week, I'm gonna reach out to at least two of them, and even if it's really short, hey, Miss Williams, I don't know if you remember me or not, because you kind of always start with that one just in case, right? You say, I don't know if you remember. I had your class in third grade. I still remember every single moment of it. Thank you for teaching me this. Thank you for teaching me how to be this type of person. I think about you all the time. You've been a big impact in my life.
Mm.
I love you. And even if she doesn't get it from to 3 weeks from now, never gets it or responds back like, "Hey, I remember you," or "I don't," at least I know I did it. So I'm gonna do that. That's gonna be my challenge. What about you? Who else have
I
you
think it's
maybe not reached out to?
I mean, it's got to be Ian. It's got the guy is literally he's 20 miles away at the like I don't live that far from the university, and it's if anyone is still watching, I mean, well done. But be sure to leave a message. Like check that we've done this shit. We'll be able to see it. We'll respond. But it's like yeah, I think, and the thing is, you've said something there. Like even if they haven't remembered you, if you're like, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but you made my life better at that point. Even if you don't remember the person, they're still going to see a message saying you've had an impact on them. Fuck, great.
Absolutely. It's
So
gonna make them feel so good.
yeah, I think, yeah, definitely. I think I should, because I'm always bigging up, because I've had some really shitty university lectures. Like I've had some really shitty ones. And I always say like
Oh,
the perfect one for me is Ian McKenzie. And then I fucking talk to him. So yeah, absolutely. I think I've got to, same as you, I have to reach out and do that. I think that's definitely something that's got to happen really. I'm just thinking of the last thing I wanted to kind of cover, because we did kind of say about it, but I feel like we've talked around the subject rather than on it, about suicidal ideation within the military and in general for men. And I'm just wondering kind of your thoughts on that in whatever direction, because obviously you're saying like there's a lot of people you know of that are just you'll see them reports all the time and they're gone, and obviously I've tried before, and just anything you were thinking and kind of your thoughts or your solutions or your suggestions around it or anything at all.
Um, I mean, I guess I can put out some suggestions,
Mm.
and I think it revolves around something that you said earlier, is like realizing that everybody's normal. Like
Mm.
a lot of things that are happening in your life has probably happened in somebody else's. And a lot of things that you're looking at somebody else is like, hey, it's not bad to ask them, like, hey, I know your grandmother died. Like, how are you dealing with that? Instead of just being so afraid that you don't have the tools to have the conversation, you don't know if they just feel a little better that somebody reached out and actually asked them the question. Even if you're not a mental health therapist, somebody knowing that they're not alone is extremely helpful. And I think as men, we have to get out of the just the idea that if we talk, we're weak. And if we go seek help, we're weak. And my first ship was I was on an all male boat, and everything was just bravado, and it was like extremely intense. And you wouldn't like you could maybe tear your ACL, maybe playing football, and you'd be afraid to go to medical to get checked out because you think somebody's trying to think they're trying to get out of work or something like that, right? You're just building up all this stuff in your head, and we gotta get out of that. We gotta stop thinking that we can do it all by ourselves and that it makes us stronger.
Yeah,
Because nothing, nothing big you can pull by yourself.
yeah,
If you want to be the strongest one, if you want to be able to pull the big weight, you want to be able to knock down giants, move mountains, you're not going to be able to do it by yourself. And if you have people along with you, you can get it done a whole lot faster too. So I think for the people who want to be able to help, start searching for those tools. Start listening to your podcast where you're having conversations with people that have to do with mental health. So you can start maybe identifying when people have problems
mm,
so you can start building a vocabulary around like how to have a conversation about that stuff, and then maybe what resources they may have in their local area that can push them towards getting help if you're not the one that can help them.
yeah. I mean, absolutely. And I think the thing of thinking that you're not alone as well, it's something I've always said is that you you are the answer to what you're going through, but that doesn't mean you don't need to be given the tools. You know, it's if you go to the gym for the first time, if you don't know where any of the weights are, you're never going to be able to work out. You ask someone, like, and they go,
Yeah,
the weights are over there. Now that doesn't take away from you. Like that doesn't make you. It doesn't take away from you for not knowing where the weights are. You needed someone to show you where they were because you've never been in the gym before. In the same way that if your mental health is crashing, you've not had to deal with it before. You need somebody else to show you where the weights are. You know, it's that kind of thing.
there we go.
It doesn't take away from you at all. And that I will plug my charity because I run Up for Mental Health. If if you're going through something or anybody you know is going through something, upformentalhealth.org. If you go there, there's a lot of different things that you can do. But if you are in a kind of crisis situation, you're not sure at the moment, if you go to our resources and you go to the standard resources of like Let's Chat, that will have a breakdown of emergency numbers at the top, as well as if you're not in the UK, it's a UK charity. Right at the top, there's also a link to international. So if you're in America, whatever, you can find links there to nearby. But there's crisis lines. There's also broken down in alphabetical order because I have OCD and I do that kind of stuff. For your whatever mental health issue you're going through, and then right at the bottom, there's some generic websites that you may not know what you want to go through, but you can find stuff there. So there's always something there if you can't find it anywhere else. But do reach out because it is so important. I think we've kind of gone round most things, and I'm sure there's a million things we've missed and a million things we could talk about because it's always the case with the podcast. It's especially like the way I like to do it, which is more kind of free flowing, and then you kind of go, "Oh shit, yeah, there was that stuff that he said then." Fuck. This is why I don't. This is why I don't edit my stuff very much because if I try and look back at it and edit it properly, I'll be like, "Damn it, I should have." I'll beat myself up too much. But is there anything that you think? That you can think of right now that we haven't covered that you'd like to kind of just say before we finish off, or anything at all that you're just going to go and it's just clicked in your head?
No, I mean, I think we covered a lot, and I think we got to the root of I think like a root of a category that I don't get to a lot
Mm,
in just having conversations with dads. We kind of get to the joking of, maybe my kid's only eating chicken nuggets and gummy bears and I can't get them to eat real food. Or we're talking about, postpartum depression for our wives or just maybe not feeling yourself. We
mm,
never get a chance to really deep dive into what if I start having thoughts about suicide? Or
yeah,
what if I start spiraling into a deep depression? Or hey, like I'm cool, I'm fine, I don't feel emotionally out of touch, but I don't have any friends. Like, how do I get friends again? I think
yeah,
we have really covered what's going to allow some of my father friends and some of the other guys that is going to hear this, who's in that position, either they have kids, are going to have kids, or don't have kids at all, to kind of get out of that funk and create, that community for themselves. So I appreciate this conversation. I like to do mine the same way. Don't
absolutely, man.
structure it, just get into it, man.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the last thing I'll say there is because you said it a few times the word fine, and I know I use, and anybody that watched me when I was a mental health streamer, I think the word fine should be banned from everybody's vocabulary because you're never fine. It's a bullshit phrase. If you're good, you wouldn't say you were fine. And if you're actually bad, you're just saying fine so nobody checks up on you. Tell people
That's
how
a
you actually are. Because if you say fine, you're either going to be left alone or you're going to be pestered. One of the two is going to happen, and neither of them are necessarily good for your mental health. Just be open. If somebody actually is asking, and this goes out to everybody else as well, if you're asking how somebody is, mean it. Because if they then open up to you, don't go telling them off because of how they feel. If you want to ask someone how they are, mean it. And if you're answering, actually mean what you say. The word fine should not be in your vocabulary. It means nothing unless you're telling about how good the weather is today. It's a nothing word. Anybody that's still with us now, firstly, go get yourself a cookie. You deserve it. But thank you so much for everybody. Thank you so much to Maya for joining us. And it's been a pleasure. And we've gone into an area that we don't tend to go into here, which is, you know, much more in the kind of a very specific area that we miss a lot and that we don't really talk about, even though we've had people that you've had on your podcast, like RJ Zimmerman, has talked about things about father, but never really gone into anything. So we definitely miss things as well. So thank you so much for being on here. I'm not too sure who our guest is next time. It may even be a solo from me. So I'm sure about, 90% of you won't tune into that because, I see my stats, people. I see them. I know who's fucking coming back. But thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we will see you again next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for watching. You just listened to Here for the Dads podcast with Maya Crawl. I am so grateful that you're here. But if you're new to this space, what I need you to do is slow down and subscribe, share, review, or rate. Whatever you can to help me out, because I'm on a journey to create a space for existing fathers and new fathers that's going to allow them to be a little bit more confident and a little bit more efficient at what they're doing. Thank you.